Bipartisan legislation focusing on prison reform is moving through Congress.
The First Step Act does a number of things, including curb mandatory minimum sentencing and focus on inmate reentry into society. I sat down with Georgia Congressman Doug Collins, who introduced the legislation in the House, about why it's so important. Congressman Collins, thanks so much for joining us.
I'm glad to be here.
So the First Step Act deals with a lot of specifics within the criminal justice system. There are anti-recidivism programs that this addresses. It's obviously already passed in the House. The Senate could take this up. Why is this such an important bill? Let's just start at the 30,000-foot level.
Well, I think the biggest reason it's the most important, one of the more important bills is we talk about bills up here a lot of times, and we talk about it in terms of, what it will do here and sort of off obscure terms. This one is very real. This one has, as I've said before, has faces behind the lettering in the bill, because we're dealing with people who are currently incarcerated, people who want to have a second chance, they want to be a part of it, and we're also dealing with people every day who are going into the system. So when we look at people and the value that they have in life, we look at the chance for a second chance, a chance to come back into society after you've made your mistake and make a productive life. That's what makes this bill so important. And I think it makes it so important to the lives of families. And when you get it down to that base level, that's what we're here about.
Now, this is a largely bipartisan supported bill. You've obviously already gotten a tremendous amount of Democrats to vote for it in the House. And the belief is that you have a lot of Democratic senators vote alongside with Republicans to have this sail through. What are the objections to it so far?
The biggest objection is it doesn't go far enough. It's one of those issues of what I call the extremes. It's not that the bill is not good. I've never really had a lot of folks come up and say that we don't like the bill, even when it went to the Senate and they've added a few things. It's more that they want it to do more. They wanted to do more sentencing reform, wanting it to do more of X. You just put that in there. So when you get to a point like that, you know you're on the right track, and what you have to do is you have to do what I call is the art of the possible. What is possible at this point? Hakeem Jeffries is my partner on this. We've had a lot of bills that we've done together, and Hakeem and I have, what we felt like we've done is sort of spun that line right down the middle. We said, here's what we can get, here's what we can add to and still keep the coalition together, both Republicans and Democrats. And we've succeeded so far. And I think the issue at this point, Will, is getting Leader McConnell to put it on the floor, and we're going to see a good vote in the Senate, and it'll come back to us and see this to the President. Can't emphasize enough also the emphasis of the President and Jared Kushner and his staff in dealing with it. So I think that's helped us both ways.
Do you have any sense of what the timing is going to be from Senator McConnell to actually put this on the Senate floor and have a vote?
I'm hopeful in the next couple of weeks. They're still doing their whip counts now. They're working on that. It's got support, again, like I said, tying up the loose ends and adding in some of what the Senate, the way the legislation is actually done. We did our part in the House. Now they're doing their part. Hopefully in the next week or so we'll see that.
Senator Cotton has been a vocal critic of the First Step Act so far. Can you just address some of his specific concerns or problems with this?
Well, I think most of his concerns are addressed. He's just, Senator Cotton has just a different view of criminal justice. He has just a different view that if you've made a mistake, we're going to lock you up, and really is not a lot of concern on the recidivism side and not a lot of concern on what happens when they get out. I think when you take a short or version look or a short view look of criminal justice and it being in the punishment side only, you're missing the fact that 95% of these individuals will actually come back into the communities in which they're from, including Tom Cotton's home state of Arkansas. The question is do you want them to come back into that state simply criminals who laid in a bed for 3 years learning other things from other criminals, or do you want them to have the chance, if they choose so, to start out with saying, what got you here to start with? What are the things that we can do so that when you go back home, that you're active, productive citizens? It's a philosophy issue that has been rooted in what has not worked. Frankly, some of the things that Senator Cotton is asking for, we've shown not to work. The 3 strikes and you're out, the throw away the keys, the longer sentences, we've shown it not to work in recidivism and other things. And we've also shown that when you actually work with prisoners, you actually do a scientific evidence-based approach, what the states have done, we have seen recidivism rates go down. That's a front-end savings not only in the prison system, but a back-end savings on when they come back into the community. So as I've always said, it's about money and morals. It's about the money aspect and the moral aspect of believing in people. That's where we're at.
Built into the name of the bill itself is the notion that there would probably be a second step, that there can be other things that come along. You mentioned the White House's support for this thus far and how critical that's been. We obviously have a Democrat-led House that will start in the new year. Do you believe that with support from the White House that there could be, after, assuming that this bill goes through, that Senator McConnell brings it forward, is there going to be a second step? Is there going to be something beyond this, and will Democrats come on board for it?
I think so. The question will not be necessarily on a second step at this point. The question is, will we get the first step done? because I believe this first step is so crucial in the next 2 weeks to get done. I think Leader McConnell, if I had anything to say, would I say implore him to realize this is the step that gets us to anything else that we may want to do, because it provides something to show that we can move forward in a large way and to do things that actually make a difference in the system when it doesn't destroy the system and actually makes it better. So that gives us a background to say we've had a success here, then we can have another success. My concern is if we get it out of this Congress is that we'll go back to sort of more of our more partisan divides on saying, well, we can get more from a Democratic House than we could from a Republican House, and then we end up with a problem when it goes back, like say, to the Senate, and they have a numbers problem over there to get it voted on. So I think we've struck a good balance right now. This is not a bill that overreaches. It's not a bill that underreaches. It has found the proper spot, and now's the time to move it.
Can I ask you about the Mueller probe as well, which has gotten in the news a lot this week? It's been in the news for a long time. We now have somebody who claims to be a target of the investigation, Jerome Corsi, saying that he is being coerced by the Mueller team to lie about committing a crime, the crime of lying, in fact. He says he did not commit it. Do you think that the Mueller probe is at least skating around the edges of what is ethical for a prosecutor?
I think I've become very concerned about that. We've seen this in the prior. Look at the convictions that they've gotten. Look at far as what I'm concerned, the scope of what they're supposed to be investigating. That was Russian involvement in the 2016 election. It's now morphed it many times into saying it was collusion with the president, which the president has denied, and we've not seen any evidence that there's a collusion existing. What we have seen is leaning on lower level members, saying, what did you know? Asking them, as Ms. Corsi said, asking me one question and then 5 minutes later asking me another question and saying I lied about it. These are the kind of things that I think really bring us to the point that the Mueller investigation needs to come to a close. They've been going on now. It needs to find their landing pattern. They need to find it. And if they have something, they need to put it out there. If not, it's time for that investigation to come to a close.
Do you think that Congress should pass a law to protect Mueller? That's gotten a lot of attention.
I think at this point, the Mueller investigation is going on like it is intended to. I think they understand that they need to come to a close at some point in time. There's been no reason for Congress to intervene in this. Just to protect Mueller or not. Mueller's doing fine on his own. I think the new interim attorney general is overseeing this investigation. The biggest issue at this point in time is bring it to a close.
Do you have any concerns about the acting attorney general involving himself in any way here that would disrupt the investigation? Would it be wrong for him under any circumstances to fire Mueller or to somehow limit or stop the investigation?
I think he's made it very clear. He's looking at the scope of the investigation, which Rod Rosenstein actually laid out. If they're staying within the scope, I think that's what he has said, and he's gave no indication of doing anything else. This is basically a problem from the left, the problem from those who did not want Donald Trump to be president to start with. They're wanting this to become a fishing expedition into everything that he may have ever done, which is not the purpose of this council. And so I think he's made it very clear he's going to be following the rule of law. Let's bring this back to that rule of law and let's say, Mr. Mueller, do your investigation, but finish it. This is not an ad infinitum kind of thing where you continue just to find anything that you possibly can. And if you're only coming up with perjury convictions, what are you actually trying to get to start with?
Congresswoman Pelosi looks to be the next Speaker of the House. She has been saying in recent days that there will be a check on the rest of the government, on the Republicans and on Trump, but they'll do so with dignity. Is it your expectation that Nancy Pelosi is going to lead a charge to impeach the President of the United States?
That'll be up to Ms. Pelosi. And I think she understands that the American people, that is not something that they're in favor of. I think we've seen that over time and time. If you look at polling data, this is not something that the American people run on. I think they're going to have a hard enough time trying to convince the American people that out of certain races that their party moved far further to the left than most of the American mainstream. And I think they're going to be dealing with those kinds of issues on what they want to try and put forward. Look, for them, it's an easy target. They didn't like the president. They didn't think he won. The problem is they had a bad candidate in 2016 who didn't choose to campaign in certain areas. And Donald Trump resonated with America. He got elected. They've never got over that. We'll see what Ms. Pelosi wants to do. If she wants to waste what I believe is 2 years of a speakership doing things like that, let her go ahead. But we're also going to be there to put a check on her on ideas that is out of the mainstream as well.
Congressman Collins, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
It's always good to be here. Thanks.